Hello there, sword friends. Today I'm going to do something a little different and talk about what a typical class is like at the Toyama Ryu dojo that I happen to study at. I've gotten a lot of questions about Toyama Ryu, about swordsmanship, about classes, and I thought it might just be fun to share what a typical class is like. Sensei Seth gave me the okay to share with you the film and kind of go over what is typically included in class. And on top of that, I do want to note a couple disclaimers, if you will. One, this is just one window of one day in one class, and it's not representative of the Toyama system in total. There's a lot of different topics and categories of things that are covered that we didn't work on in this particular class. So don't think of it as a window into everything you might learn in Toyama Ryu. The other bit is that our dojo is a little different, sometimes more formal or less formal than others, more formal or less formal on the day or event or necessity or what we're working on. So you might see a lot of different people in a lot of different clothings, and you'll even notice I'm wearing shoes, which is often a no-no in some classes. So it may not be representative of the Toyama school or the dojo near you. It was a day that everyone was working on something a little different. There were some new people in class that were seeing if the program was for them. There were some senior people that were working on repping some stuff before they go to Shinzen test for rank. So lots of different stuff going on. Anyway, that's a little bit about what's going on in the class. I will link as well the Seiryukan Dojo website in the description down below. If you're in the Minneapolis area and you're thinking about joining, then you can find more information there. It's the school that I happen to attend. If you're outside the Minneapolis area, it's not necessarily terribly helpful, but there are other Toyama schools. This might give you some idea of the curriculum or what's covered in those things. Though every dojo, while it studies the same style, may have different flavors or different areas of focus. So keep that stuff in mind. Anyway, that's the subject of the video. So hopefully you find it interesting. So the experience for me begins with a long drive. It's a bit of a hike to the Toyama Ryu dojo that I attend, and I drive across the city to get there. Weather can play a part in the drive, but you don't necessarily need to hear that. Once I get there, the Toyama Ryu dojo that I am at is inside of the Center for Blade Arts, which hosts HEMA and Kendo and Olympic fencing, and it's an old bowling alley that's in a state of slight disarray, but it's a good home for the dojo and a lot of other people studying various types of swordsmanship. Class doesn't really begin when it begins. It starts when people begin arriving and they set the dojo up, and everyone should really be doing something. That's kind of one thing that you'll notice throughout, is that the students are responsible for cleaning and putting stuff up and then taking it down later, which I'll talk about. But running a broom across the floor, setting out the shomen, the signage and things like that, the kike, the stand, and all that goes out, and everyone should be doing something except for the teacher. The sensei should not have to do all that. Then after everyone sets some stuff up, which I don't have a whole lot of photos of, we begin dressing. I obviously don't have pictures of everyone putting their clothes on. That would be taboo and rude to my fellow students. But you dress up after you set the dojo up and get stuff cleaned up. Once everyone is dressed, we begin an exercise routine, or a limbering routine, a warm-up, if you will. And it's the same regimented routine every time. And it focuses a little bit on joints. When I started, I was a little bit more fit, and I found it a reasonable warm-up, but nothing that really got the blood pumping. Now that I've been sedentary from COVID for a couple years, haven't followed my workout regimen like I used to, the shoulder exercises and stuff are really, really helpful and prevent me from injuring or getting strained. So it's an important part, and it works the knees, the joints, and the stuff that you're going to be working on quite a bit in the dojo. So there's everyone lines up in a circle, and we all go through this scripted stuff to rep out some warm-ups, and you can kind of take it at your own pace. If you want it to be a workout, you can move fast. You can there are little small movements in the workout that you can do, or the warm-up that you can do, to make it more or less. So everyone can kind of go at their own speed and warm up to the degree they want. There's not necessarily a push in the class to stretch this far, or to you go through the motions, but you push yourself to the point that you feel it's okay. Next is the bowen, and it's again the same scripted bowen. There's three bows. There's the shomen, the shrine, the teacher, and your classmates, and then to the sword. From there, we go into another, I wouldn't call it a warm-up, but a scripted series of cuts that everyone reps out a few times. So you do a series of cuts to the head, the chest, and all the way down to the knee. Then you do a series of cuts horizontally, or diagonally down, then diagonally down the other way, then diagonally down and diagonally up, then the reverse of that. Then you work on a suihei, a horizontal cut, and then you work on ski, the thrust, one iteration of that anyway. Then you work on noto, or putting the sword away, drawing and sheathing it a few times. So that is the typical regiment. The next warm-up after we do bow-in, there's another warm-up with a sword in your hand. And from there, the rest of the class takes a different shape depending on what the day is. So some days you're going to work a lot on iaido and just doing the forms and the kata that are set out in Toyama Ryu. Sometimes it'll be the older version of Toyama Ryu. Sometimes it will be the school that I go to also does various Batsudo federations, so it might be their scripted kata that's being worked on, especially if they're prepping for an event or a competition of some kind. Sometimes it's gekken, which is a sparring thing where you have some helmets, some padded swords, and you're working on a little bit more application, trying to test the technique safely. And then there's I can't even remember the name of it, but there are 2-person drills where you're working on, potentially with a live blade. And so there's a few different flavors of things that are happening or can happen depending on the class. What we did is we worked on iaido. There's a lot of new people in the class, and some people are testing for rank, so it's good breather. They're working at their own pace. So we go through the motions of all the Toyama Ryu kata. That's what we did in this class. And then there's a break. So there's a lot of saying we go through the kata is it's a broad brush for something that takes quite a lot of time. So we go through, at least in this case, we went through the 8 Toyama Ryu kata that were basically iaido that we're doing. And Sensei's walking around observing people as we're going through each one a few times and making corrections based on that person's level. So it's a lot to drink from the fire hose and take everything all at once, which is what it can feel like when you're learning kata. And as you do the same motion hundreds or thousands of times, little nuanced tweaks are gradually added to what you're doing, and some of the small steps start to make sense. But everything has meaning, everything has a purpose, everything has a correct way, and sometimes it actually changes around depending on leadership and what comes down from on high. But anyway, we're working on these kata, and Sensei's walking around correcting, instructing the new people, and then kind of refining for some of the more senior students. So then we take a slight break from that. People diverge from what they're doing, and we start doing different things. New people were going through some of the other kata that maybe they hadn't learned in more detail. And me and another senior student were working on the name of it escapes me at the moment. Kumitachi, that's the word I am looking for. So we broke apart, some people working on other things. I was working on Kumitachi with another senior student, and I was learning. So this exercise is often done with live blades, but that would be somewhat irresponsible to do as a person is learning. So me and other senior student are learning. He's instructing me. Sensei's coming over and giving us critiques and refinements, as well as kind of helping the other senior student remember which number goes in what order, because there's a lot of kata, and as you're learning them, they start to blend together, and it's hard to remember which one in what order, especially if you don't do it all the time. I would say that, at least for me, the Toyama kata 1 through 8, I remember those really well. We seem to work on them in every class. Kumitachi, some of the Batsudo Federation stuff, that blends in, and I have trouble remembering which one. Once I get going, though, I start to remember what's going on. Anyway, Kumitachi is somewhat new for me, so that's what I was working on today. I learned a lot in class. It was fun. Then there's another pause, and typically the latter half of class is dedicated to something else. Cutting, in particular, if anyone has mats, though those are few and far between these days, but there are some people working on rank, and so there were some mats and cutting. And again, what you'll notice in this is that everyone then sets up for cutting. There are people that are sweeping while cutting is happening. There are people stacking mats, and everyone is participating to keep a brisk pace to the class and making sure that we're not spending too much time, but that at the same time people are learning the process of what goes on with mats and cutting and all of that kind of stuff. So some people spike, some people pull the mat off, some people sweep the floor so that the person is ready. And I haven't gone to one, but apparently in competition it's particularly important to keep that pace going, because there's a lot of people working, and if you want to have time for drinks afterwards, then you need to keep the pace up. So anyway, cutting is happening. I didn't cut this particular day, but other people did. Sensei will critique and give an idea, break out a measurement, angle-san as it's called, to see how close to the measurements you are. And the thing that you want to note about Toyama Ryu is that we're cutting a stationary mat. It's a big part of the art, and it's an aspect of competition and rank as well. And you're going for very specific cuts. Now, cutting through a mat sometimes can be challenging, but cutting through it at very, very specific and precise angles, keeping a 45-degree angle on 6 cuts down a mat is a challenging thing to do, especially if you're doing it very, very exactingly. So sometimes it's not just cutting through the mat, which arguably from a martial context, cutting into a mat 2 or 3 inches would be potentially deadly. The point of what we're doing is very, very precise cuts with very, very controlled movements. And it takes a certain level of skill to execute on cutting through at that angle and cutting through at that angle in the form that's appropriate. So anyway, that's what's being worked on. Sensei will critique you. Sensei then did some cutting himself. And then it's cleanup. Everyone cleans up, sweeps up the floor so that we're not leaving remnants of straw mats everywhere for the next classes or next curriculums that come through, and we're not leaving a mess. Everyone participates in that. Everyone grabs a broom. Everyone's putting the stuff away. So that's some stuff to note. You'll note that everyone cleans up. Everyone participates. Everyone but Sensei should be moving around. If there's not a broom available or a bucket or something like that, then you're walking around looking for spare pieces of stuff. After the cleanup, we bow out. It's the same regimented kind of bow out. It's the same thing every time. We pay our respects, and then class is over. We do take down signage and stuff like that, and again, everyone should be participating in putting stuff away other than Sensei. And then class is over, and that's pretty much one class. What we didn't do is you didn't see any gekken, so some of the sparring that can happen. There's some exercises with boken. There's a lot of different topics that weren't involved in this particular class, but it is a good window into what a typical class would be, and everyone's working on stuff. There's certainly depth to the art where you start learning kind of how to dance, just the steps, and then for a long time you're focusing on just the steps. Once you kind of remember the steps, then you're refining the steps, and timing is very nuanced and small. One thing that I'm trying to work on is on the second and third kata. I can draw my sword and at one step most of the way, take the other step to get more power in my hips as I move, and there's little nuanced things about how you turn your saya, how you do this or that to refine the kata. And it's meditative, and it's easy for me to go to class and take my mind off of other things, out of work, out of whatever else is going on, and I enjoy that aspect of it. Plus, swords are really cool. So swinging one around is good. It also gives me a chance to test various swords. I was working with the Skydro sword at the time, which was a review sample, so it lets me test some things more formally. But the main reason that I keep going, one, I have a passion for swords, obviously, but it's meditative. I really do enjoy the class. I learn something. It takes my mind away from everything else, and I can focus on just a topic and a hobby that I enjoy. So anyway, that's a class. That's maybe why I do it, a little bit of it anyway. Hopefully that's interesting. Again, if you're interested in the Seiryukan Dojo and joining it, if you're in the Minneapolis area, then links are in the description down below. And that's all I got. If you have any questions, throw them in the commentary down below, and I will endeavor to ask, or I will endeavor to have Sensei answer the questions if I can't. That's all I've got. Cheers, and thanks for watching.